through some of the questions for your first essay exam. So you should be seeing the instructions that you got last week and a reminder that this essay exam is one of 2 you'll take this semester, and this first one is worth 20% of your course grade. It's due this coming Wednesday, which will be May 26th. Your response should be written as an essay in response to the prompt that you choose. It should include something like an introduction, a number of main body paragraphs. You pick the number enough to get the job done well, and a conclusion. We're looking at about 1.5 to 2 pages in length, double-spaced, 12-point font. Our course readings and videos should be mentioned in your responses, but they should be the only sources you use. Submit your file to Blackboard. There's a Turnitin link inside Blackboard for you to use. It's in your lesson, and you have a choice of topics to write on. We're going to look over 3 prompts, and you're going to choose one. And last, I wanted to note that you should be citing sources. That'll be the Norton Introduction and any videos that we use that you want to incorporate, and you'll use in-text citation to mention those. Okay, what's going on in a philosophy essay exam? You're going to be asked to think about and explain your answers to certain questions. So you're striving to offer your very best explanations of the reading that you did and the arguments you learned about, along with some refined opinions. There's always opinions in philosophy, but they're not just any opinions. They're the kinds of opinions that you can defend with logical, objective arguments. I know that it is a 1.5 to 2 weeks into a summer philosophy class, and that this takes kind of a precision of thought. Some of you might have training in that, some of you less so. So we're just going to do our very best. That's what I'm asking of you, is to do your best. I don't expect that anyone is already an accomplished philosopher. So I want to see sincere and honest work. It does not have to be perfect work. Okay, another part of being philosophical about these questions is the ability to think about the weaknesses in your own personal point of view and opinions, and to think about some objections or responses that people might give to your account, your explanation, your view of an argument. So do your best to explain the course material. That's part of what you're proving in your essay, is that you read the course material slowly and carefully, and you absorbed it, and that you've started exercising your reasoning skills, and that you're using the best reasoning that you can give. Remember, don't use any sources besides the assigned course materials. And in the Norton Introduction, you have the articles that you'll use to explain your answer to the question. Quote from them when needed. That would have quotation marks, and it would also have a parenthetical or in-text citation to the Norton Introduction. The same is true about the paraphrases and the summaries. Those should have an in-text citation to the Norton Introduction. Okay, a reminder about how to submit your assignment. You're going to upload your essay to a digital Dropbox, which is a Turnitin.com Dropbox, but it's at our Blackboard website. You do not need to go to Turnitin on your own. If you do, it won't know who you are or what class you're from. If you do it through Blackboard, it will know what assignment you're submitting, what your name is, and all that relevant material, so that it's exactly where it needs to be. You'll be submitting your writing into the Turnitin.com database. Turnitin does check your paper, or your essay in this case, for plagiarism, and it also gives grammar and spelling tips. What you're going to be able to view is something called your non-originality score. Not everything in your essay is expected to be non-original. If you're quoting from the Norton Anthology, that is going to come up as non-original, but that doesn't mean it's plagiarized unless you didn't tell us where it came from and didn't put quotation marks around it. As soon as you see that you've done those things, then you say, okay, that was non-original, but that's different than academic dishonesty. So, in other words, the way that I do this, you should expect your essay to show a score higher than 0%, because you should be using passages from your textbook as you support your point of view. Okay, when is it a problem? When you're using quotation summaries or paraphrases that are not properly attributed. That's when we're using academic dishonesty, and using sources that are from outside the textbook would also be a problem. Okay, It is set so that you can submit a little bit early. You would want to do that soon. And if you see that there is a problem where it's not just non-original, but it's unsighted and it's not clear that you're not using your own words, then you could fix that and submit it again before the deadline. Okay. Your percentage comes along with a color. And so one way to think about how things are going for your essay in terms of plagiarism, and I'm spending so much time on this partly because students stress about this a lot, and I'd like to lower your stress. If your percentage is in the blue or green range, that's the color you see associated with the percentage, there's probably no problem with your essay. Once you get up into the yellow range, this is true even for shorter papers like a 1.5 to 2 pager, there's more likely that there is some sort of academic dishonesty or plagiarism going on. And if your percentage is in the orange or red range, there's definitely something wrong. You copied information off the Wikipedia or something along those lines. So that's what you're looking for, is blue or green should be make you feel completely okay. Don't focus on the percentage as much as you focus on the color, and also when you look back at your essay, the parts that it shows highlighted, if those are supposed to be non-original and you've indicated that, then you're good. I also get a lot of questions about style for any writing that students turn in. So in-text citation is the most important part. I do not need a cover page or works cited page. And in terms of style, use whichever style manual you're comfortable with. As long as you're consistent, that's fine with me. Some people are MLA people, some people are APA people. Last thing on sources, is it a permitted source? You should ask yourself. If it's not the Norton Anthology and it's not a video included in our Blackboard site, then the answer is no, it's not a permitted source and you shouldn't be using it. And I know that you'll have limited resources to work from, just the textbook. Second, are you announcing the source? Are you saying, according to Aquinas in his 5 ways, he argues that everything in motion must have a cause, right? That's announcing a source so that the person reading your essay answer will know that you didn't make up that argument, Aquinas did. And then your citation should be enough that a reader could find the source for themselves. So if I know it's the Norton Introduction to Philosophy, and then it's page 32, that's enough for me to go find it and see if what you've reported is on that page is really there. Okay, here are your 3 topics. You read through all 3 and then choose one. So you recently finished reading, say, Thomas Aquinas's 5 ways, 5 arguments he's provided to try and prove the existence of God. And so this first question is Aquinas, and it focuses in on one specific argument. Okay, so Aquinas's arguments are designed to establish the existence of a being that differs radically from ordinary objects. So it's a kind of being that's not like ordinary things in the world. It differs in various important respects. In Aquinas' first way, he starts from the fact that ordinary objects are moved and seeks to show that there is at least one thing that is not caused, and so on. In each case, Aquinas writes as if his argument shows something stronger, namely that exactly one being possesses the remarkable quality in question. Right, so he's made a leap between there must be some of these beings that exist that are uncaused objects to there's only one uncaused object. Right, this is like if I argue to there are some people who can run a mile in 6 minutes. Therefore, there is only one person in the entire universe who can run a mile in under 6 minutes. Here's the claim Aquinas doesn't give an argument for. Why does it have to be exactly one or only one being like that? So the exercise, right, the part you're going to write up. Explain Aquinas' argument in 2 parts, right? Specifically the argument that there is an unmoved mover or an uncaused cause, right? A thing that can cause other things to happen, but doesn't need anything to cause itself. So 2 parts to explain that argument. First, reproduce his argument for the claim that there's at least one being that has that property in question, right? That is able to exist without anything causing it to exist. And then the second and the harder part, try and complete the unfinished part of Aquinas's argument. Why is he trying to argue that there can be a maximum of one such kind of being? Why can't there be lots of beings who are uncaused things? Okay, so that's choice number one. Choice number two takes us to the second half of the chapter and to the problem of evil, and it looks at Antony's argument about animal suffering. So, most discussions of the problem of evil focus on the suffering of human beings, but Antony follows William Rowe in emphasizing the suffering of animals as well, right? When we look at the suffering in the world that we can observe, we can see human suffering. We can also see the suffering of other non-human animals. So here's William Rowe's example. He says, suppose in some distant forest, lightning strikes a dead tree, resulting in a forest fire. In the fire, a fawn, which is a baby deer, right, is trapped. It's horribly burned, and it lies in terrible agony for several days before death relieves its suffering. Rowe goes on to say, so far as we can see, the fawn's suffering is pointless. No good came of it. And you can see immediately after that block quotation, we have an example of in-text or parenthetical citation. So if you've never done that before, that's what we're looking for. Notice we have the author, the name of the article, the journal it appeared in, the year of that journal, and then the page number in that journal. So to answer the question, could somebody go find this article for themselves? Yes, they could, quite simply with a library search. It would be easy. Okay. Now, what do we think about Rowe's example? Rowe's example has an advantage, right? Which is it blocks many of the usual responses to the problem. Because many people say, oh yeah, there's suffering in the world, but it's because humans make bad choices, or because humans need to be closer to God so that they can eventually go to heaven. Rowe says animal suffering can't be justified on the ground that is a consequence of free will, because most people argue that animals don't have free will. And if we want to argue that it serves to bring animals closer to God so that they can go to heaven, most theological traditions, that is, most religious traditions, say that animals don't have free will and are incapable of union with God, which is a fancy way to say they don't go to heaven. They don't have an afterlife. Right? So here's your exercise in response to that background information. Construct a response to the argument from animal suffering on behalf of the theist. So you're going to try and defend someone who says, no, there's a reason that God would let that baby deer die over days painfully. There's some sort of point to it, right? Any response you offer has to try and identify a believable, morally okay reason that God would allow animals to suffer. It can't be a reason like, oh, well, God really likes to watch animal suffering. It makes him or her excited, because that seems like a morally insufficient reason. We don't let other beings suffer just for our own pleasure, right? So you have to try and find a reason that would explain why a God would let animals suffer. All right, and your third choice is also from Louise Anthony's article, and it looks at the free will defense. I believe you also find information on the free will defense in Does God Exist, the introduction to the unit, which was also assigned reading. Okay, so according to what is known as the free will defense about suffering, God actually allows suffering, right? God could stop suffering, but chooses not to, is the claim, right? Why would a God do this? There's usually two parts to this claim. Number one, free will is a good thing, right? That's 9a. I shouldn't call it number one. 9a. It's good for human beings to possess free will. Notice that's up for debate, but some people say, gee, it's awfully nice to have free will. It's good that if God exists, God would give us free will. Other people say, what's so great about free will? But we're going to start with 9a, right? A good thing for people to possess is free will. And 9b, if we're going to have free will, God is incapable or cannot prevent us from making bad choices and harming others. As Louise Anthony notes in her article, this explanation doesn't succeed at telling us why God allows suffering due to natural causes, right? That's kind of the topic of question 2, if you choose that one. But we might ask whether the free will defense even succeeds in the limited task of explaining why God would allow suffering due to human choices. So here's the thought experiment or scenario. Suppose there's someone named Jones who's about to attack someone named Smith, and you're there too. And as Jones is about to attack Smith, you pull Smith to safety at the very last minute. Obviously, Jones's plan of hurting Smith didn't succeed, but his free will was not intruded on, it seems like, right? That's why we ask the question, have you interfered with his free will? No, Jones chose to go running at Smith with an axe or whatever happened there, right? And you didn't prevent him from charging at Smith. You simply made it so that Smith didn't get hurt by Jones's free choice. Okay, so here's the question. We're going to assume that if there's a God, God is a lot more powerful than you. God can see situations turn badly much more quickly than you can, and so forth. So why doesn't God do likewise? In the situation where you protect Smith from Jones, why doesn't God step in and do a role like that anytime a human choice is going to cause harm to other people? So the claim is, without limiting anybody's capacity for free choice, God could still protect the innocent from the evil choices of others. Here's one example of how God could do that. We could just walk around with an invisible shield around us that would prevent others from harming us without any good reason, right? So you live in some sort of special bubble that's only activated when someone is trying to harm you for no good reason. If a nurse wants to give you a shot, right, the bubble won't pop up because the nurse is giving you a shot for a good reason, right? But if somebody decides that they just want to kick you in the shins really hard to hurt your leg, then the bubble would come and they could run at you and try to kick your shins, but they wouldn't succeed because you would be protected. Next claim is that a good parent would certainly protect her child in this way if she could, right? If you have ever given your kid healthy food to prevent them from getting sick, right? You're doing the equivalent of building a bubble around them. But here's the strange thing. God doesn't do this. We can see that in the world, right? People suffer because of other humans' choices all the time. So the end of this summary, right, to put you in the right mind frame to write this is the authors ask, isn't that compelling evidence that a good God does not exist? And here's the creative thing. People often don't know that philosophy can be very creative, right? It's intellectually creative. It's not so much artistically creative. But your exercise or challenge here is to write about and imagine what would it be like to live in a world where you were protected from human evil. Is there any way that that world would be worse than the world we live in right now? And if it wouldn't be any worse, does this show that the free will defense fails even on its own standard, which is free will has to exist because it's a good thing and God is good and always gives us every good thing he, she, or it can give us, and there is no way for this very powerful being to give us free will without letting other humans hurt us or try to hurt us at least? Why couldn't there just be the bubble is the question. So I hope talking through these choices helps make it a little easier for you. Again, if you're when you write on one of these topics, you should for sure have read the Does God Exist section of the Norton Anthology. And when you work on Aquinas, make sure you read Aquinas carefully and that you focus in on the argument, which is the first way, right? He's got 5. This one focuses in on the first way. Use the reader's guide after Aquinas to help you understand that first way, and then focus on that argument. For the problem of animal suffering, you're looking at Antony's article. And for the free will defense, you are also looking at Antony's article. So there should be citations directly from those 2 sources in your essay. All right, I hope this is helpful.